No one could have imagined that the end of the world would begin this way. Not with wars, nor with fire, nor with screams, but with sleep. One day, people simply stopped waking up. At first, it seemed like a medical mystery, an isolated case. A man falls asleep on the subway and doesn't wake up. A woman falls asleep in the middle of a conversation and stays motionless. Days later, dozens, hundreds, thousands, all falling into a deep sleep, impossible to interrupt. It was called global sleep syndrome. Governments tried to contain the panic. Scientists raced against time, seeking explanations, but science couldn't hear what the silence was saying. Within weeks, the entire world had fallen asleep. Hospitals filled to capacity, streets covered in serene bodies, cars stopped in the middle of avenues, entire cities transformed into dormitories. And what remained? And what remained were them, the Watchers. No one knows why some remained awake. There was no pattern. Some were young, others old. Some saints, others criminals. They just stayed awake while the rest of the world slept. At first, they tried to wake the others. They shouted, shook them, cried, but nothing worked. The sleepers breathed peacefully, with a faint smile on their lips, as if they were dreaming of something too beautiful to leave behind. The first nights were the worst. The city lights stayed on, the television's broadcast static, and the wind blew through millions of motionless bodies. The sound of the world disappeared, and in its place, an unnatural calm appeared, as if the planet itself had fallen asleep too. The Watchers organized. They built barricades, gathered food, generators, shelter. They started taking care of the sleepers, keeping them clean, fed, and safe. They called themselves the Guardians of Sleep. At first, it was an act of love. Then it became a penance. After all, how do you care for someone who doesn't respond? How do you feed a body that won't wake up? How do you live among millions who seem dead but aren't? Time passed. The clocks lost their meaning. Days and nights merged together. The cities were covered with vegetation. The machines stopped one by one. And still, the sleepers remained, without hunger, without aging, without dying. Scientists among the Watchers began to study. They discovered that the brain waves of the sleepers were identical. Millions of minds dreaming the same thing, a collective dream. But no one could decipher what they were dreaming. Some said they were living in a new world, a place where time didn't exist. Others believed they had been taken by some force, a call from the earth itself for them to rest. As the years went by, the Watchers diminished in number. Some went mad with the silence, others grew tired and lay down and never woke up. Those who remained lived among the ruins, keeping candles burning, writing down dates that no longer mattered. and sometimes talking to the sleepers, as if waiting for an answer. But there was no answer. One night, something happened. One of the sleepers opened their eyes. The watcher observing them almost screamed, but held the sound back, as if afraid to break the spell. The sleeper's eyes were open, but the gaze wasn't there. It was empty, distant. And then they murmured, a faint sound, almost inaudible, words no one understood. Then they closed their eyes again. The watcher wrote what they heard in a notebook. They are waiting. Waiting for what? No one knew. Over time, other watchers began reporting the same phenomenon. Sleepers moving their lips, murmuring words, making gentle gestures in the air as if talking to someone invisible. It was as if the world of dreams was seeping into reality. The boundaries between wakefulness and sleep began to disappear. Some watchers began to see images floating in the air, flashes, fragments, pieces of the collective dream. Golden fields, blue lights, a sky pulsing like the inside of a heart. It was beautiful, too beautiful to be human. But with the beauty came fear, because every time a watcher saw one of these visions, they slept soon after, as if the dream were calling them. Now, only a few remain, maybe 100 across the entire planet. They walk through empty cities, keeping old machines running, writing names, waiting. One of them, the oldest, believes this is all a cycle, that humanity will wake up one day and find the world clean, healed, transformed. Another says the opposite, that when the last watcher falls asleep, the dream will become eternal, and the waking world will cease to exist forever. But perhaps the dream has already won, because sometimes even the awake watchers feel that the air vibrates as if it's breathing, that the ground pulses beneath their feet, as if the planet had fallen into the same rhythm as the sleepers. And on certain mornings, they hear the sound of a song, very soft, very old, a song coming from the motionless mouths of those sleeping. Today, there is only one known watcher. He writes this account by candlelight. The wind enters through the broken windows, and the world outside is still. He feels the weight in his eyes. His body is tired. The temptation to lie down, to give in to the same sleep that took everyone else. But he resists, because he believes something terrible will happen when the last watcher falls asleep. Perhaps the dream needs witnesses. Perhaps sleep needs to be observed to continue existing. Or perhaps the awakening of all the sleepers depends on the last awake gaze. The watcher looks out the window. Outside, the horizon shines with a strange light, as if the sun were rising within the very sky. And for a moment, he thinks he hears voices calling his name, flying in the wind, coming from everywhere at once. He smiles, closes his eyes, and the sound of the world disappears again. No one knows what happened afterward, if the sleepers woke up, if the dream won, or if the planet fell asleep for good. But some say that on new moon nights, it's possible to hear a deep breath coming from the earth, as if the whole world is still dreaming.